Discover the amazing midnight encounter, how one last coffee transformed her life with a billion. Sarah sat alone at the diner, her fingers curled tightly around a chipped mug of coffee, the steam rising soothingly against her face. After the exhausting shift at the café, this quiet moment was her refuge, a small sanctuary in a world that felt relentlessly heavy. Yet, tonight, the comforting sounds of the coffee machine and sizzling pancakes couldn't drown out the tidal wave of unease in her chest. With every sip, her mind swirled with the weight of her struggles. How could she build a future for Lucy, one that was filled with hope and stability, when her own dreams felt impossibly out of reach? A chime above the door signaled a newcomer, pulling her from her reverie. David entered, a man whose presence seemed to illuminate the dimly lit diner. He took a seat at her table uninvited, exuding a confidence that was both inviting and intimidating. She hesitated, unsure if she was ready for company. Yet, something in his easy smile brought a flicker of warmth. As they exchanged pleasantries, Sarah felt a quiet thrill, a spark of life shimmering beneath her exhaustion. But as the conversation deepened, she found herself engulfed in the shadows of her own past, her husband's sudden illness, the hardship of single motherhood, and the suffocating weight of an uncertain future. David leaned forward, his interest genuine, and as they shared their stories, vulnerability replaced her reluctance. With every line he spoke about his own struggles with ambition and familial expectations. Sarah felt an unspoken bond form between them, a fragile but undeniable connection woven from their shared resilience. Then he mentioned an idea, one that sent Sarah's racing mind into a fevered whirlwind, a food venture that could benefit both her and the town. Could she truly weave her culinary passions into a life she had only dared to dream of? Yet a haunting thought crept in. What about Lucy? The promise of ambition glimmered like a mirage, an oasis teasing her in the dry desert of reality. Desperation wrapped itself around her heart as she questioned if she could risk everything to reach for it. Before they could explore their ideas further, something shifted in the atmosphere. She caught sight of a familiar face across the dinera, local politician known for his ruthless tactics against anyone who dared to disrupt the status quo. In that moment, dread washed over her, as it dawned on her that ambition might come at a cost that could endanger Lucy's safety, driving her deep into conflict. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the coffee cooled in her hands, another truth struck her like lightning: an unexpected inheritance, linked to her late husband's family. The café she had always dreamed of. The thought sent waves of excitement crashing against her fears. Could this be the very thing to uplift their lives? But as she glanced back at David, a surge of anxiety jolted her. The politician's antagonism would surely follow any mention of ambition, threatening to crush everything beneath its heel. Every nerve in her body tensed, as anticipation twisted in her gut. What lay ahead was uncertain, a storm brewing that could bring both opportunity and devastation. Would she have the courage to seize this potential and confront the looming shadows? As the diner lights flickered overhead, Sarah knew she stood at a precipice, torn between her dreams and the profound fear of loss that haunted her. Could she truly fight for her family's legacy, arming herself against the very forces that sought to keep her silent? With David by her side and a heart caught in a whirlwind, she sensed change was on the horizon. But was she ready for the battle it would incite? The sharp clatter of plates pulled Sarah from her thoughts. The mundane sounds of the diner stark against the chaos inside her mind. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, willing herself to reclaim clarity amidst the turmoil. The vision of Lucy peeking through the door of her future café filled her with warmth, but that warmth was doused by fear. Would it be enough to protect them from the darkness looming outside, especially the shadows cast by that politician's unyielding glare? David's voice broke through her haze. Sarah, you seem distant. What are you thinking? She met his eyes, the sincerity in his gaze encouraging. The flicker of a plan began to form in her mind, an idea blooming like a flower pushing through concrete. Maybe, just maybe, this cafe could be more than a dream mitt, could be a beacon for her and Lucy. But doing so would require more than mere hope. It would demand strategy, courage, and perhaps a few calculated risks. I've been granted a cafe by my late husband's family, she confessed hesitantly, her voice trembling. But I worry, what if it brings more trouble than it's worth? Every opportunity comes with its challenges, he replied, leaning back, thoughtful. But let's think this through. What are the strengths you'd bring to the table? A rush of emotions erupted within her. Years spent blending flavors, preparing meals, and crafting stories behind each dish surfaced like a dam bursting. It was true. Her culinary skills had always been her refuge, a channel for her creativity, yet never had she considered it a viable path for her future. Yet, talking with David illuminated facets of her personality that had been neglected since the tragic days of her past. Maybe I can transform existing recipes, she pondered aloud. Or incorporate local ingredients, to make it a community-driven venture. I could even host cooking classes for kids, helping them explore their own creativity. There's power in that, David encouraged, his voice invigorating. People crave connection, especially through food. You have the passion. Refine it into a plan. And while preparing, protect your vision. Know the landscape you're stepping into. She felt herself inspired by his words. Yet, the clouds of self-doubt continued to swirl within her. Her heart raced, scanning for potential pitfalls. What if the town refused to embrace her? What if the politician made good on his threats, targeting her enterprise before it even opened its doors? These questions flooded her mind. Could I really take this leap? Is it worth exposing Lucy to the risks? David's expression softened, understanding the gravity of her concerns. Decisions are never easy, especially those that impact a loved one. But retreating into your fears won't serve you or Lucy in the long run. It's about finding your balance. She nodded slowly, weighing David's insight. It was a balancing act, one that beckoned her to step into the unknown. She envisioned standing behind the counter, serving meals, laughter rolling from tables filled with happy faces. That vision momentarily brightened her despair. But then, she was reminded of the lurking threat's counterforces, ready to extinguish her flickering flame. She would need a strategy, a way to forge ahead, and a plan to protect her ambitions from those who sought to snuff them out. Maybe I should talk to others in the community, gather support. I can't fight this alone, she suggested, her resolve hardening. David smiled, his enthusiasm infectious. Absolutely. Build your network. Lay the groundwork. But know this, standing up is only the beginning. The time would come when you'll need to face your fears head-on. That politician won't be easily intimidated. A surge of adrenaline washed over Sarah, mingling with the lingering anxiety. There was much to do, yet so many unknowns. But she felt ready to reclaim a fragment of her lost self, taking the first step with David by her side. Her heart pounded as she considered the coming storms, yet a flicker of determination ignited within her. I have to start planning now. And as they rose to leave the diner, a new sense of purpose driving her, Sarah could feel the winds of change gathering at her back. But the question loomed heavier than ever. Would she have the strength to stand firm amidst the inevitable confrontation that lay ahead? The warm, August evening air wrapped around Sarah as she stepped out of the diner. As she walked, her heart raced, not just with fear, but with a burgeoning sense of agency. She shifted her focus to the first steps required to turn her cafe dream into reality. David's encouragement reverberated in her ears, heightening her resolve to transform obstacles into opportunities. Gathering her thoughts, Sarah made a mental list. She would need to define her brand and identify her unique offerings. flashes of childhood memories, helping her mother in the kitchen. The smells of herbs and spices mingling, laughter filling the air surged through her mind. This was her territory, a language she knew intimately. I can make it personal, she thought, as she envisioned her menus filled not just with food, but with narratives. Each recipe could tell a story. A dish could carry a memory. But first, she knew she needed to connect with the community, local farmers, artisans, and families. That would mean more than just gathering support. It would mean establishing relationships, building a foundation of trust throughout the town. The next day, Sarah prepared herself for her first outreach. She headed to the local farmers market. Emotions surged within her as she maneuvered through rows of vibrant fruits, vegetables, and handmade goods. Memories of cooking with Lucy filled her, igniting her motivation. As she approached the first stand, the vendor, kindly older woman with a sun-kissed smile, greeted her warmly. "Hello, I'm Sarah. I'm opening a cafe and wanted to connect with those who grow the food I'll serve. Would you like to chat?" The woman's interest piqued, and they fell into conversation easily. Sarah explained her vision of a cafe that focused on local ingredients and community bonding through food. As she spoke, she watched the spark in the vendor's eyes on early victory for Sarah, fueling her confidence. When she left, she not only had secured a promise of fresh produce, but also felt a sense of belonging in the community she once feared would resist her. Weeks passed, and Sarah continued her outreach. Her network expanded, each connection solidifying her mission. She met other passionate individuals who believed in local solutions. They exchanged experiences and tips, encouraged each other. With each interaction, she rediscovered parts of herself that had long been dormant. Yet, with each success came a twinge of anxiety. The looming threat of the politician lingered like a shadowy phantom. People whispered tales of his power, his influence felt throughout the town. Sarah had heard conflicting accounts of his methods, and the unease never fully left her mind. "Just gather the support, but be prepared," David had warned. That evening, sitting at her kitchen table, Sarah, pen in hand, she confronted her growing fears. She doodled her plans, what it could look like, the community events, the cooking classes. But there it was, again, tightening in her chest. She needed to confront this fear head-on. The next day, Sarah attended a local town hall meeting, decision spurred by the desire to understand the political landscape surrounding her venture. As she took her seat, she scanned the room filled with familiar faces, some supportive, others more skeptical. During the meeting, the air grew tense when the politician entered. His presence was commanding, his rhetoric cutting. Her apprehension made her heartbeat thump louder. Yet, alongside her anxiety, a resolve began to form within her. Was this not the moment that she had been preparing for? As he launched into a tirade against local businesses, suggesting they threatened the town's heritage, Sarah felt a swell of courage. She realized this was the time she needed to rise, to defend her vision and, most importantly, the future she envisioned for Lucy. Deep breaths steadied her as she raised her hand. The room fell silent, all eyes on her. The confrontation had arrived, the moment she had feared yet yearned for. "I know some of us may disagree, but building a cafe rooted in our community can only strengthen what we hold dear," she began, her voice firm. "It's not about competition. It's about conversation, bringing us together through the art of sharing food." She paused as a ripple of murmurs traveled through the crowd. But as she finished speaking, she knew that whatever the outcome, she had stepped into her truth. Yet, would the town embrace her message, or would the politician's power override her budding aspirations? The answer loomed, leaving an unsettling anticipation in the air, as she wondered what truly lay ahead. The room remained tense after Sarah's statement. Her heart raced as she awaited a response. She felt exposed, the rawness of her emotions thrumming in her ears. The politician, unfazed by her words, resumed his accusations, but she no longer felt small. Instead, she stood taller, grounded by the conviction behind her vision. As the meeting concluded, the scattered applause felt muffled, but a flicker of recognition caught her attention. An elderly gentleman approached her. Marshall, a retired chef known for his influential culinary blog. "Well said, young lady. You've got guts," he said, his weathered hands extended for a handshake. His acknowledgement meant more than she anticipated. They spoke for several minutes, exchanging ideas, and before long, Marshall shared his success stories of local ventures which had thrived under pressure. The validation reignited her determination. The experience of standing up to the politician had emboldened her. That week, she further explored her ideas, focusing on the unique aspects of her café. What would set her apart would be the heart behind the food meals, synonymous with memories. Perhaps even including a story behind the dish feature on her menu. This would tap into her childhood experiences, igniting a unique connection with her patrons. Equipped with Marshall's insights, and her vision deepening, her next mission was clear. Siving through her network for support, she drafted messages to farmers, artisans, and community members she had met at the market, inviting them to a small gathering to discuss collaboration. Days later, she prepared for an intimate meeting. Her home transformed into a cozy venue for ideas to flourish. She arranged mismatched chairs around the dining table, infused the air with the scent of freshly baked bread, and set up a chalkboard, displaying her vision. When the first guests arrived, the weight of self-doubt crept back momentarily. Would they see the potential she was envisioning? As they gathered, laughing and sharing stories over baked goods, the energy shifted. It became clear that they were united in something deeper than just business. Instead, it felt like a gathering of dreamers, yearning for connection. Sarah opened the meeting, sharing her vision and how she saw each of them playing a vital role in the story. Ideas cascaded around the table as excitement stirred. The fear of the politician's presence faded into the background, overshadowed by constructive discussions. Each collaborator became an unlikely ally, offering encouragement, solutions, and inspiration. However, the lingering threat of the politician felt like a dark cloud on the horizon. Shortly after the uplifting meeting, Sarah overheard snippets of conversations, highlighting the politician's scrutiny of her emerging network. This instance stoked the embers of her anxiety that had simmered beneath her resolve. "Be careful," David had warned, and Sarah grappled once more with the possibility of having to confront him again, her hard-earned connections vulnerable to severance. Steeling herself, she created a plan. She would leverage the relationships she had built and draw strength from them. But, as she prepared, a quickening pulse of fear reminded her of what truly lay ahead. The spark of ambition intertwined with insecurity, each emerging connection seemingly stronger but also increasingly precarious. Her industriousness propelled her forward, yet reminded her that every commitment carried risks. At the next town hall meeting, she had decided she would not just defend her vision. She would rally her alliances to stand united before the looming figure of opposition, transforming the confrontation into a shared purpose. But would her allies back her when the chips were down, or would they falter under pressure? The very thought of leading this charge both exhilarated and unnerved her, planting seeds of doubt even as it strengthened her resolve. As she lay in bed that night, the stakes settled heavily on her chest. Tomorrow would mark not just another step toward her dream, but a pivotal moment in a much larger confrontation. The pivotal question loomed large. Was she truly ready to lead the charge, or would she retreat into the shadows once again? Gone were the days when Sarah would let doubt dictate her decisions. As she stood in the dim light of her kitchen the next morning, brewing coffee for the gathering that felt both monumental and daunting, she could feel her resolve sharpen. Each drip of coffee resonated like a reminder. She had a choice to make, one that would shape her future. With the aroma of coffee filling the air, she recalled every interaction she had with her collaborators, their faces illuminated by excitement, ambition, and a shared sense of purpose. Could she truly harness that energy at the town hall? The thought caused a brief flicker of hesitation, but she gritted her teeth, pushing it aside. This was her moment, and moments didn't wait for the fearful. Flip charts sprawled across her living room, filled with notes and ideas from the previous meeting. Each phrase echoed in her mind, emphasizing her objective, creating a community atmosphere with her café that transcended mere transactions. She envisioned more than a café. She dreamed of building a space for meaningful connections, memories to be made, and stories to be shared. As she dressed, a feeling of anticipation intertwined with anxiety coiled in her stomach. What if the politician had gone to her supporters, turning them against her? What if they decided to play it safe, instead of supporting her bold vision? Every scenario weighed heavily on her psyche, but in that moment, she realized she had a powerful ally in herself. Failure could be the mother of reinvention. Arriving at the town hall, her heart thudded uncomfortably in her chest. Rows of seats captured the familiar faces of farmers and artisans alongside curious community members. Sarah noticed the room was buzzing, a charged atmosphere sprouting from whispered conversations about her café and the political scrutiny she had faced. Stepping up to the podium, her voice trembled initially, the collective gaze of the audience amplifying her nerves. But looking out over the crowd, she forged a connection with each individual, channeling her passion directly into every syllable of her speech. She spoke of the importance of local ingredients, of shared histories reflected through food, and of the community forming around tables laden with stories and memories. Intense focus replaced her fear, and as she ignited flames of enthusiasm in the room, she spotted familiar faces nodding in support. Their engagement was a beacon of encouragement. It reaffirmed that she wasn't alone in this battle. As her confidence blossomed, Sarah deftly turned her attention to confronting the politicians' criticisms. We all know local business owners, farmers, and artisans who have built connections with our community. These are our friends, our neighbors, she declared. The audience shifted in appreciation. But just as she began gaining momentum, an unsettling realization washed over her. She had yet to fortify her base of support against the political storm. Calls for accountability spiraled from the audience, but an unease began to settle. Was it enough to simply capture her supporters' hearts with words? Or did actions need to translate into a tangible collective response? Her plans craved solidity, and she felt more determined than ever. She needed concrete strategies to channel the burgeoning energy into a unified front. As the meeting concluded, voices filled the air with discussions, but inside, Sarah faced a dawning realization. Inspiring them was just the first step, and that was the crux of her challenge, sustaining momentum and converting passion into a plan of action. The supportive chatter continued around her, but she could almost feel the weight of the politician's gaze looming ever closer. Now, thoughts whirled in her mind, focusing on how she would ensconce her café and its vision into the fabric of the community while preparing to confront the opposition directly. With every fiber of her being, she knew she was on the precipice of a monumental change. But the question gnawed at her: how would she protect her vision from the threats lurking in the shadows? Would the crowds turn to her for guidance, or would they waver in fear? With her mind racing and heart pounding, she heard a whispered challenge in the air. Could she really harness the support pouring forth, or would she find herself standing alone, adrift in uncertainty once again? The air in the town hall buzzed with a mixture of excitement and uncertainty as Sarah stepped down from the podium. As the crowd dispersed, she felt the weight of her words pressing against her chest. The fleeting euphoria of her speech was quickly overshadowed by the pressing reality of her unorganized plans. What she had ignited was hope, but hope without action risked fizzling out into nothingness. In the corner of the room, she spotted Martina, one of her closest allies and steadfast supporters. Sarah made her way through the crowd, her determination battling the gnawing self-doubt. Martina's presence had always been a source of strength. "We need to build on this energy," Sarah said, her voice firm, yet tinged with urgency. "It has to be more than just words. We need a way to keep this momentum alive." Martina nodded, her brow furrowing as she considered the implications. "Maybe we can organize an open forum. A day for people to bring their ideas about the cafe. They could share their visions about what it should be, and you could guide that conversation. The idea resonated with Sarah. This was precisely the kind of involvement she needed. A space not confined within the walls of her cafe, that welcomed community input, would empower her supporters. But she also recognized the risk. Faced with the politicians' criticisms, this could backfire. Would opening the floor to the community transform the dialogue into chaos? Martina seemed to pick up on her hesitation. You could leverage your role as a facilitator. By controlling the conversation, you can direct their insights back into your vision. The possibility unfolded like a roadmap in front of her. Empowering the community would tie her project to their collective identities, while simultaneously answering the calls for accountability. She felt a shift inside, her uncertainty giving way to a burgeoning confidence. Let's get to work on this. As days blended into nights, Sarah and Martina coordinated logistics, setting dates, crafting pamphlets, and rallying support through social media. Sarah forced herself to maintain a semblance of detachment from her fears. Instead, she plunged into action. Each task made her feel more grounded, reshaping her doubts into tools of her own making. Then came the night of the open forum. The cafe buzzed with chatter, the energy palpable as people trickled in, filling every available seat. Sarah stood at the entrance, her heart hammering against her ribcage. This would not just be a casual gathering. It was a critical moment to establish her authority, to show that she could indeed harness the collective voice of her community. As discussion erupted, she skillfully navigated through the various opinions, thoughts, and visions for the cafe. Yet, beneath the noise, she was attuned to the underlying tensions simmering within the group. There were concerns about cost, doubts about the sustainability of local ingredients, and wary skepticism towards her ability to deliver on her promises. Each concern was like a strike against her fragile sense of triumph. "Sarah, how can we trust this will actually come to fruition?" questioned David, a long-standing critic. His skepticism clutched at her gut like a vice. She felt the room's early enthusiasm waver, and instinctively she leaned into the discomfort. Taking a deep breath, she replied, "Trust is built through transparency. I aim to share my journey with all of you, good, bad, and ugly." As she spoke, a tremor of resolve ignited in her voice. "Let's not just imagine this cafe. Let's build it together, brick by brick." The murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, and for a moment, Sarah's resolve fortified. Yet, the shadows of doubt lingered. The question that nagged at her: would they remain united, or was this just another fleeting moment of enthusiasm before the harsh reality set in? The night wound down with scribbled notes and feverish discussions, but her internal struggle festered. The forum had worked, but the greater challenge remained. Could she ensure this support translated into sustained commitment? Or were the gains merely ephemeral? As she cleared tables and exchanged goodbyes, Sarah felt the pressure of expectations bearing down again. Breathing in deeply, she continued to wrestle with her fears, envisioning a battleground not just with the politician, but within the very community she was trying to cultivate. Determined, she returned home to reflect, yet her mind raced with the thoughts echoing from the earlier gathering. Was she truly capable of leading such a transformational journey? The challenge loomed larger, demanding every ounce of her courage. And amid all the chatter she'd stirred, a broader confrontation awaited her. Which would prove the greater adversary, the looming political threat, or her escalating self. As dawn broke the following day, Sarah's heart continued to race, not from excitement, but dread. The echoes of the previous night still reverberated through her mind, a constant reminder of what she had promised, and what hung in the balance. The community had shared their hopes and dreams. But with such openness came the anticipation of failure, an indefinable specter that loomed over her. Sipping on a cup of coffee, brewed not in optimism but in desperation, she grappled with how to transform the buzz from the open forum into actionable steps. Each little detail seemed magnified under the harsh scrutiny of her ambitions. Could she rally the same enthusiasm she saw in others back into her own resolve? She knew she needed more than a plan. She required a strategy that could adapt to challenges yet to come. Standing at the window, she reflected on all the fears that had sown seeds of doubt, learning the shifting dynamics of those opposing her. Building something worthwhile meant navigating not just logistics, but egos, differing opinions, and unpredictable reactions. That afternoon, she found herself in a small local diner, pondering the feedback from the forum. The walls were adorned with photographs and newspaper clippings, celebrating past accomplishments of locals. Bursting with nostalgia, she felt inspiration bubbling beneath her uncertainty. This could be her café, filled with faces and stories, like the diner-an intersection of lives, memories, and flavors. In the corner, she caught sight of an older gentleman poring over a stack of papers, muttering under his breath. Tim, as she recognized him, was a retired architect who had once helped design a successful establishment down the street. Seized by an urge for connection, she approached him. "Tim," she started, drawing his gaze away from his scribbles. "Do you have a moment?" "What is it, Sarah?" he replied, the line of his brow softening a notch. "The forum last night, there's so much potential, but I'm not quite sure how to bring it all together. What do you think would help?" As she spoke, she noticed the flicker of interest in his eyes. The wheels in his mind began to turn, though skepticism was still palpable in his gaze. "You've already done something most don't have the courage to attempt," he noted. "But without a solid foundation, all this enthusiasm is just noise." His honesty struck a chord. "I know my vision," she confessed, a tremor in her voice, "but it's the execution where I falter." "Then let's talk about planning." He leaned in, a glimmer of mentor-like encouragement breaking through his usual reluctance. "I can help with that. We need a framework for your concepts, something structured yet adaptable." The conversation shifted from possibility to practicality, and Sarah felt a revival of her earlier resolve. Tim shared strategies for sustainable funding that emphasized local partnerships, and as he outlined ways to integrate the community's feedback into tangible steps, she found herself mapping it out mentally. His guidance fed her hunger to craft something more substantial than just a café, a community hub that could thrive amidst the uncertainties swirling around her. A sense of clarity emerged from their discussions, and by dusk, Sarah left the diner with a series of actionable items. The weight of doubt still clung to her, but it felt lighter now, replaced by an ember of possibility. She would harness this opportunity for mentorship, allowing a new dynamic to forge her path forward. Yet, as she walked home, the nagging question lingered. How would she maintain this momentum and keep the community engaged when the spotlight faded? Sarah reached into her pocket, fingers grazing against the small stack of notes from the forum, each a testament to unfulfilled promises. She could not ignore the truth of her internal struggle. The confrontation loomed closer than before, a mental battle becoming more pronounced with every step taken. As shadows danced on the street lamps, she felt a resolute fire ignite within. Tomorrow promised a fresh challenge, one that would test not only her resolve, but her ability to lead authentically. Could she extract the lessons of the past to craft a future that embraced every one of her community's voices, while also confronting those associated with her failures? And beneath the exhilaration pulsing through her veins, a definitive question emerged. When faced with the necessary confrontation, would she remain grounded, or succumb to the swelling tide of doubt? The following morning, as sunlight broke over the horizon, Sarah awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. The heaviness of doubt that had clung to her like an unwelcome cloak felt distinctly lighter, worn thin by the promise of action. Tim's insights from the previous day reverberated in her mind. A structured yet adaptable plan was within reach, and all she needed to do was take the first step towards its execution. After a quick breakfast, she grabbed her notes and headed to the local library, a space she had often overlooked in her contemplative journeys. Today, it would serve as her war room. She needed solitude to map out her strategy where ideas could flow unimpeded. Walking past rows of books, each a portal to someone else's world. She wondered how her own narrative would unfold. She settled into a corner, surrounded by books that smelled faintly of coffee and history. As she spread out her notes, the familiar comfort of purpose settled around her. The first objective was clear: identify community members who could contribute to her vision beyond mere enthusiasm. She began listing potential allies: entrepreneurs, logistics experts, and even her neighbor who baked the best pastries in town. However, with every name came the shadow of vulnerability. Who was she to rally these individuals when she had yet to conquer her own landscape of uncertainties? The flicker of self-doubt threatened to extinguish her newly ignited flame. But acknowledging these fears helped shape her resolve. Perhaps vulnerability was not a flaw. It could be a bridge to authenticity. As she meticulously crafted her plan, she began to embrace the idea of meetings that encouraged genuine discussion, venues where people could voice their concerns as much as their ideas. Highlighting the phrase "open dialogue" felt like a mental breakthrough. This was not just about her café. It was about creating a dynamic space where community synergy thrived. The day wore on, punctuated by coffee breaks and quiet moments of reflection. Each tick of the clock reminded her that she was not merely planning, but preparing to confront her demons, the urge to retreat into silence whenever challenges arose. The thought of organizing an information session began to take shape. She could invite community members to discuss the vision and potential drawbacks together, fostering a sense of ownership among them. As excitement bubbled within her, the question of timing pressed in. Would she risk an early announcement and potentially encounter resistance, or would she wait until her plan was flawless? The realization struck her: perfectionist tendencies could derail genuine opportunities for growth. Embracing the iterative process would be her new mantra. Under the fluorescent lights of the library, Sarah prepared an outline for her session, each bullet reflecting the essence of collaboration. With every detail she penned down, she felt a thread of confidence weaving through her initial doubts. Yet, lurking just beyond her newfound clarity, the specter of confrontation remained. She had yet to face those who had doubts about her capabilities. As evening drew nearer, a sense of urgency coursed through her veins. She had to initiate this journey with the community sooner rather than later. The longer she waited, the more emboldened the voices of skepticism would grow. She stood abruptly, resolve hardening within her. But before she could collect her things, her gaze fell on a poster displaying community events: an upcoming meeting hosted by her fiercest critic, a businessman named Marco, who had openly doubted her vision at the forum. The tension in her chest tightened. This was not just an opportunity. It was a confrontation waiting to happen. The time had come for Sarah to not only present her ideas, but to interact directly with those who challenged her. Could she gracefully navigate this turbulent territory with poise, emerging from it with her vision intact? A single thought crystallized in her mind, igniting a new surge of determination. This meeting could either make or break her, a moment that would test not just her plan, but her very essence as a leader. Deep down, she questioned, would she truly be able to stand her ground when faced with opposition, or would her fears once again eclipse her ambitions? The next morning, Sarah stood before her mirror. The reflection, staring back at her, felt more like armor than vulnerability now. Her eyes were sharp, determination framing her features. Today was not just another day. It was the day to confront her fear. Marco's meeting loomed before her like a landmark of expectation and dread. The anticipation thrummed in her chest, electrifying and unsettling all at once. Every detail of her appearance was scrutinized, every choice of attire seeming monumental. She selected a simple yet professional blouse, hoping to convey competence over doubt. In her mind, she rehearsed interactions, scripting responses to potential critiques, visualizing strength in her stance. A part of her hesitated, wanting to hide beneath a guise, but the other half roared for authenticity. Arriving at the venue, Sarah took in the surroundings: a bustling room filled with murmurs and laughter that masked an undercurrent of tension. She could see familiar faces, people she respected, but who also watched her with bemusement. Marco stood at the front, a charismatic figure commanding attention with ease. Immediately, Sarah felt her insecurities swirl within her, tugging insistently at her gut. As Marco spoke, she deciphered the words, but the subtext echoed louder: skepticism. His clear dismissal of ideas, similar to hers, laced with condescension, felt personal. Yet, as she sat there, absorbing the harsh critiques, instead of shrinking away, a fire sparked. No more running. When the opportunity for questions arose, Sarah's hand shot up, propelled by a potent concoction of fear and resolve. The room quieted, all eyes on her. Her voice, though wavering at first, steadied with every word she spoke. "Thank you, Marco, for your insights. I'd like to share my vision and how it aligns with the community's actual needs." The phrase "actual needs" seemed to ignite something within her, marking a shift in the conversation. As she elaborated on her ideas, detailing how her café would be a true reflection of community fabric and a hub for dialogue, she noticed Marco's expression darkening. Was he truly threatened? The realization was exhilarating. Each shared concept chipped away at her armor of self-doubt, revealing a clearer picture of her mission. She articulated her vision, crisply, no embellishment, just truth and community spirit. The crowd leaned in, intrigue flickering in their eyes. This was no longer just her battle. It felt like an unfolding narrative, inviting others to join. As she concluded, the room erupted in a mixture of supportive applause and doubtful murmurs. She had held her ground. The shift was palpable. She could almost hear the gears of perception grinding. Yet Marco stood to respond, the weight of his skepticism palpable. "Interesting ideas, Sarah," he stated, his tone a measured attempt at diplomacy. "But are you truly equipped to handle the complexities of running a business? This isn't a whimsical dream." Each word was a knife, yet it also grounded her. His question wasn't just about her capabilities, it was about nurturing her inherent strengths. An unexpected confidence surged within. She wasn't a naive dreamer. She was a woman with a strategy, willingness to adapt, and her own burgeoning competencies. "Marco, my vision isn't whimsical," she replied, her voice calmer than she anticipated. "It's born from understanding needs and building relationships, framework I am more than prepared to pursue." Afterward, as she mingled despite her racing heart, she absorbed the varied responses. Some were encouraging, others perplexed. But what mattered was engagement. She had begun to change the narrative, from fear of failure to excitement over potential collaboration. Leaving the venue, Sarah felt lighter, even victorious in ways she hadn't anticipated. Yet, an undercurrent of unease clung to her thoughts. Was this confrontation truly resolved, or had she simply stirred the pot? As she walked home, contemplating the oscillating support and doubt surrounding her vision, she realized the task ahead was only beginning. The conversation wouldn't cease with one meeting, if anything. It had opened the door to further discussions and deeper interactions. Reaching her doorstep, an unexpected thought struck her with urgency. How could she effectively ensure these conversations continued? What steps would she take to cultivate trust, to turn skeptics into allies? The groundwork for evolving relationships lay ahead. She felt the familiar flutter of determination rising within her as she ultimately whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." In that moment, she resolved not only to engage individuals like Marco again, but to transform her fear into a call for strategic dialogue. With the setting sun framing her silhouette, a new urgency took hold. The true test awaited with the next meeting. She would have to secure her foundation before further exposing herself. But was her foundation built on strength or fear? Would she be ready to face her critic head-on again, armed with newfound confidence, or would the looming shadow of doubt resurface? The weight of consequence bore down on her. The days following the meeting were marked by an exhilarating sense of purpose, intertwined with the weight of expectation. Sarah awakened each morning, embracing a confident resolve that had begun to bloom within her. Gone were the days of wavering uncertainty. She had taken a stand, ready to transform her dreams into a reality. Harnessing her experiences, she began to identify how best to engage her community, now not just as supporters, but as crucial partners in the journey of her café. Every interaction transformed into an opportunity for connection. She held open forums, gathering feedback that welcomed a tapestry of perspectives from local vendors, artisans, and families. As she facilitated these discussions, the café evolved beyond a mere business. It became a communal heartbeat, resonating with shared desires and dreams. Each recipe discussed, each idea generated, pushed the framework of her vision closer to imminent realization. Her evenings turned into planning sessions, complete with sketches of the café layout, menus filled with narratives of local ingredients, and frameworks for cooking classes that encouraged children to explore their culinary creativity. With every passing day, the café began to take shape in her mind, and with it, so did her identity. She was not merely a survivor or a dreamer. She was a leader, ready to confront any challenges ahead. Yet, the specter of Marco lingered, a constant reminder of the doubts that still loomed in the minds of some community members. As she scaffolded her commitment to transparency, she invited him to share his critiques from the forum within the café's vision drafts. The thought was intimate, direct line of potential antagonism, but it was a necessary step in the path of reconciliation and collaboration. When the invitation to collaborate arrived on Marco's desk, it felt like an armistice. To her surprise, he accepted, intrigued rather than dismissive. As their meeting approached, Sarah harnessed her nervous energy, reminding herself of her autonomy. She had the power to shape the narrative. This was her moment to demonstrate the growth she had experienced. She was prepared to stand her ground, fortified by the very community he had doubted. On the day of their meeting, Sarah radiated poise. In the bright atmosphere of her home, she presented a comprehensive vision encompassing not only the logistical framework of the café, but also its emotional essence. It's built as a response to our community needs, not just my aspirations, she asserted, her voice steady. She could see the flicker of interest in Marco's eyes as she laid out her growth plan, clear, executable, and engaging. Conversations flowed naturally, moving past defense toward exploration. Marco began challenging ideas, but instead of feeling defensive, Sarah welcomed each critique, pivoting with responses grounded in her evolving vision. As they dissected each component of her ideas, she noticed the walls of skepticism begin to crumble. It was a crucial turning point. She believed passionately in her project, and was forming alliances with those whom she initially feared might resist her. As weeks passed, Marco's transformation signified a larger awakening in the community. The variety of supporters swelled around her, putting names and faces to the vibrant tapestry of collaboration that had begun to flourish. Together, they worked, organized tastings, and outlined a business model that intertwined every participant's contributions, demonstrating how partnerships could elevate her vision. Sarah felt empowered, striding into the town hall meeting prepared to unveil their collective project. Every heartbeat echoed with anticipation as she readied herself to present a well-crafted plan, a bold assertion of community strength, fueled by her personal evolution. Amongst her supporters were those who had once remained hesitant, now allies in this pursuit of shared ownership. The politician's shadow still loomed, but now it felt smaller in comparison to the resolve of an evolving community. When Sarah spoke that evening, her voice carried the weight of genuine aspirations, the culmination of determination, and the spirit of collaboration. People listened intently, including those who had once doubted her. The support enveloped her. She stood firm in her knowledge. By the end of the presentation, as applause filled the room, Sarah looked around at the engaged faces. Warmth, from familiarity, mingled with newfound respect. This was further proof of her transformation. She had gone from carrying the weight of hope, weighed down by fear, to a leader forging a path on her own terms. As she left the hall, exhilaration surged within her. In a matter of months, She had crafted something tangible from dreams and fears. No longer did she bear the burden of isolation. She belonged to something greater, community dedicated to building a café that represented their shared histories and collective futures. In that moment of recognition, Sarah felt solid confidence replace doubt. She had proven not just to others but to herself that she could conquer challenges and embrace collaboration. This was her achievement, a café born not merely from ambition but from a spirit of community resilience, where fear gave way to connection, and dreams coalesced into something magnificent. Now, I urge you to embrace your own journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm you need to show your support. Comment below your reactions and theories about this ending. And remember, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Your support is vital in empowering stories of personal triumph.